3 years. That's how long I gave everything to that company. Late nights, skipped lunches, weekends when I should have been with family but was instead buried in spreadsheets and client calls. And how did they thank me? By replacing me with a woman who froze like a deer in headlights the moment a client asked her a question. Stay with me here, because this isn't just about losing a job. It's about learning exactly where loyalty gets you. My name is Rachel Bennett. I'm 28, and for 3 solid years I worked as the office manager at a mid-sized consulting firm in Denver. I wasn't just good at my job. I was the one clients called when they were in trouble, the one who could calm a room when a deal was on the verge of collapse. I knew every contract, every client's quirks, and every shortcut to get things done when the clock was ticking. Inside the office, I had my little circle. Ellen, fresh out of college, looked up to me like a mentor. James, my colleague, had a sarcastic humor that made the long days easier. We worked well together because we trusted each other, and because everyone knew I would never let a problem slide past me. Then Kylie arrived. She walked in one Monday morning wearing designer heels that clicked so loudly you could hear her halfway down the hall. She smiled big, talked louder, and had a way of making everything sound like she was already in charge. I figured she was here to help with overflow work or maybe handle a small project. But within weeks, things started shifting. Tasks that used to be mine were quietly handed to her. Meetings I normally ran went ahead without me. I'd find out about them afterward, usually from Ellen, who looked just as confused as I felt. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Maybe management was just testing her out. The problem was, Kylie didn't actually know how to do the work. She'd mess up client files, forget important details, and then smile her way out of trouble. More than once, I had to step in quietly to fix her mistakes before a client noticed. I didn't mind at first. I believed in teamwork, and I wasn't about to let a client suffer because someone else dropped the ball. Then came the day that told me everything I needed to know. A major client called with urgent questions about a deal worth thousands. Kylie answered the phone, but the moment the client started talking, she froze. She glanced at me in panic, her hands shaking, her voice barely a whisper. I took the phone, smoothed things over, and got the deal back on track. I thought maybe, just maybe, management would thank me for saving the account. Instead, I got an email later that day telling me to let Kylie handle more without stepping in. That was the first crack in my faith that this company had my back. At first, I tried to ignore the little changes. A project I had been leading for months was suddenly reassigned to Kylie, no explanation given. A weekly client strategy meeting, one I'd never missed, happened without me, and I only found out when Ellen mentioned something in passing. I brushed it off. Maybe it was just an oversight. Maybe management was trying to spread responsibilities. But the pattern didn't stop. It got worse. Tasks that had always been mine, budget approvals, contract reviews, client onboarding, were slipping into Kylie's lap. She didn't take them from me directly. They just ended up on her desk. And every time, I told myself to stay calm. I'd been there for 3 years. They knew what I could do. Surely, this was temporary. The problem was Kylie didn't have the skills to handle them. She missed deadlines, forgot important follow-ups, and sometimes sent emails to clients with incorrect detail. More than once, I'd find myself quietly cleaning up her mess before a client could notice. I told myself it was for the good of the company, for the clients who trusted me. I still believed in teamwork, even if it felt like I was doing all the heavy lifting. Then came the day that truly opened my eyes. A major client called. It was one of our biggest accounts, the kind you bend over backward to keep happy. The client had urgent questions about a proposal deadline and some fine print in their contract. Kylie happened to be the one who picked up the phone. I was sitting just a few feet away, sorting through invoices, when I heard her voice falter. She stuttered, flipping through papers aimlessly, not finding what she needed. The client's tone grew sharper. Kylie's hands trembled, her eyes darting toward me like a silent plea for help. I didn't hesitate. I reached for the phone, my voice calm and steady as I assured the client everything was under control. Within minutes, I'd answered their questions, smoothed over their concerns, and secured their confidence in our firm again. When I hung up, Kylie mumbled a quiet thanks and gave me a small smile of relief. I thought that would be the end of it. Maybe management would hear about how I'd saved the account. Maybe they'd remember why I was trusted with these calls in the first place. But later that afternoon, I opened my email and felt my stomach drop. A short, clipped message from the new regional manager, Mark Stevenson. Rachel, please allow Kylie to handle more client interactions without stepping in. She needs space to manage her own workload. No acknowledgement of the fact that I'd saved the deal. No thank you. Just a warning to stay out of the way. That was the moment the first real crack appeared in my loyalty. I'd worked too hard for too long to be told to sit on my hands while someone else fumbled with the very clients I'd built relationships with from the ground up. It happened on a Wednesday morning, The kind of day that started off normal enough to make you think nothing could go wrong. I had just poured my coffee when Mark Stevenson, the new regional manager, appeared at my desk. His expression was unreadable. "Rachel, can you step into the conference room for a minute?" he asked. I followed him, clutching my mug, wondering if it was about the quarterly reports I'd been working on. Inside, the blinds were drawn, and the air felt heavier than usual. He sat at the head of the table while I took a seat across from him. No small talk, no smile. "First of all," he began, his voice flat, "I want to thank you for your years of service here. You've been reliable." The way he said it, like he was reading from a script, set off an uneasy feeling in my gut. That being said, we're making some restructuring changes in the office. As part of that, Kylie will be taking over your current position. I blinked at him, sure I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" He cleared his throat, folding his hands neatly on the table. "We believe Kylie's approach and style better align with the direction we want to take the team. But we value your work, Rachel. That's why we'd like to offer you another role in our logistics department." My mind was still stuck on the first part, Kylie taking my position. "Logistics?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Yes," he replied quickly. "It's a support role. Lower base salary, of course, but stable hours. You wouldn't have to deal with high-pressure clients anymore. Lower salary, less responsibility. In other words, a demotion." I sat there, staring at him, the coffee in my mug growing cold. After 3 years of late nights, weekends, saving deals you didn't even know were falling apart, you're telling me I'm being replaced by someone who couldn't answer a client's question without panicking? His eyes flickered, but his voice stayed even. "Rachel, this isn't personal. It's business." The words hit me like a slap. Not personal? This was my life, my career, my reputation. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the floor. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not interested in a demotion. I'll clear out my desk." If he was surprised, he didn't show it. He just nodded and stood, already moving toward the door. When I stepped back into the main office, the room felt different, like everyone knew, but had been pretending otherwise. As I packed my things into a box, I could feel eyes on me. And then I saw her, Kylie, sitting at my desk, already arranging her things like she'd been waiting for this moment. She glanced up, met my eyes, and the corner of her mouth curled into the smallest, most satisfied smirk. I walked out without a word, my box in my arms, my pride barely intact, and my loyalty to that company gone for good. The first week after I left the office felt like walking through fog. I'd wake up at my usual time, make coffee, and then just sit there. No urgent emails, no back-to-back calls, no fire drills to put out. Just silence. At first, I thought I'd enjoy it, but the quiet left too much space for my thoughts. The humiliation of that meeting with Mark replayed in my head on a loop. The way Kylie smirked as I packed my thing. The stunned looks from my coworkers who didn't dare say a word. I felt angry one moment, numb the next. Some nights, I lay awake thinking about every extra hour I'd worked, every weekend I'd sacrificed, wondering how I could have been so blind. It was a Thursday evening when Ellen showed up at my door. She stood there holding a grocery bag, like she wasn't sure if I'd want to see her. "I brought snacks," she said with a small smile, "and I need to talk to you." We sat at my kitchen table, a half-eaten bag of chips between us, when she finally told me the truth. "Rachel, the reason Kylie got your job, it's because she's dating Mark." The words hit me harder than I expected. "You're serious?" Ellen nodded. "They've been seeing each other for months. No one's supposed to know, but it's obvious. And clients are already complaining. Kylie's made mistakes you wouldn't believe. Mark keeps covering for her." For a long time, I didn't say anything. The pieces were falling into place. Why Kylie had been pushed into my meetings, why Mark kept insisting I let her handle things, why it all happened so suddenly. I took a deep breath. "Ellen, I'm not just going to move on from this." That night, after Ellen left, I dug out the file box from my home office. I'd always kept copies of important contracts and records, not out of spite, but because I liked being prepared in case I needed to reference them. Now, those documents felt like weapons. I started going through them one by one, project notes, client emails, deal proposals. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There was the proposal Kylie almost tanked because she'd miscalculated a budget by $40,000. I'd fixed it the night before the client presentation. There was the contract she forgot to send to a vendor, nearly causing a supply delay that would have cost us the deal. I'd stepped in, called the vendor myself, and smoothed it over. Mistake after mistake, all quietly covered by me. I realized that if I'd let even one of those errors go through, Kylie's incompetence would have been exposed months ago. Now, though, I didn't work there anymore. I had no reason to protect her, or Mark. And for the first time since leaving, I felt a spark of something that wasn't sadness or anger. It was purpose. I didn't make my move right away. Charging and fueled by anger was tempting, but I knew that if I wanted to hurt them where it counted, I'd have to be smart, quiet even. The first step was simple. I started reaching out to old clients, one at a time. On the surface, it was just a friendly check-in. I'd call and say things like, "Hey, it's been a while. I'm no longer with the firm, but I was thinking about our last project together and wanted to see how things are going." What I heard in return confirmed everything Ellen had told me. Clients complained about missed deadlines, poor communication, and the new woman not having answers when they needed them. Some even admitted they were considering taking their business elsewhere. I didn't rush to pitch them anything. Instead, I listened. I sympathized. I made sure they knew I still cared about their success, even if I wasn't their point of contact anymore. And when a few of them asked if I could maybe help on the side, I said yes. It started small, reviewing a proposal here, fixing a budget there. I didn't advertise what I was doing. I worked quietly from my living room, billing them directly as a freelance consultant. The money was good, but the satisfaction was better. Every hour I spent helping them was an hour they weren't relying on my old company. Meanwhile, Ellen became my eyes and ears on the inside. She'd text me updates late at night, how Kylie had fumbled another presentation, how Mark had stepped in to explain basic concepts she should have known, how upper management was beginning to notice the drop in client retention. One night, Ellen called instead of texting. Her voice was low, urgent. "You're going to want to hear this," she said. "We're about to pitch a huge project to a new corporate client. If we land it, it could save the quarter." I leaned back in my chair, curiosity piqued. "Do you know the client's name?" She told me, and I almost laughed. I knew them personally, Michael Carver, the CEO of a large retail chain. Years ago, I'd managed a contract for one of his smaller ventures. We'd worked so well together that he'd sent me a handwritten thank you note. "Rachel," Ellen continued, "if they get this account, Mark will look like a hero. If they don't," she didn't need to finish the sentence. I hung up, my mind already racing. This wasn't just any account. It was the kind of deal that could change the tide for my old company. And I knew something Mark and Kylie didn't. Michael valued competence above all else. For the first time in weeks, I felt the thrill of strategy. They'd taken my job, my desk, my pride. But now? Now I had the chance to take something far more valuable, and I planned to do it without them even seeing me coming. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and Michael Carver's contact information pulled up. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. This wasn't just a friendly check-in. This was a calculated step. One that could change the game. I typed a simple, professional email. "Hi Michael, it's Rachel Bennett. We worked together a few years ago on the Westfield expansion project. I recently started my own consulting work and thought I'd reach out. If you're open to it, I'd love to catch up over a quick call." Less than an hour later, my phone rang. "Rachel, it's been too long," Michael said warmly. We exchanged a few pleasantries before I asked about his upcoming plan. Sure enough, he mentioned the big project Ellen had told me about. "That's a major undertaking," I said, keeping my tone light. "I heard you might be working with my old company on." There was a pause. "Yes, we're considering them. Why do you ask?" I took a deep breath. "Michael, I want to be honest with you. I left that company recently under, let's say, frustrating circumstances. I spent years managing accounts like yours, personally ensuring things ran smoothly. Since I left, I've heard from multiple clients who aren't happy with the changes. I'm not here to badmouth anyone, but I think you should see some of the work I did for you and others, so you can decide who's best to handle this project." He didn't hesitate. "Send me whatever you think is relevant." Within the hour, I compiled a clean, organized portfolio, past project breakdowns, budget plans, efficiency improvements I'd implement. Every document was proof of my ability to deliver results, without excuses or dropped balls. The next day, Michael called again. His voice carried that no-nonsense tone I remembered. "Rachel, I'm not going to waste time. I want you on this project directly. I trust you, and I know you'll get it done right." I thanked him, keeping my voice steady, but inside, my heart was pounding. This wasn't just a job, it was the job. The kind of contract that could sustain my freelance work for months and make a visible dent in my old company's earning. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone outside of Ellen. I simply got to work, mapping timelines, drafting proposals, setting up client calls. Meanwhile, I knew the clock was ticking for Mark and Kylie. They'd walk into that pitch meeting expecting to land the deal, only to find it gone, signed, sealed, and delivered to me. I wasn't looking for applause. I wasn't seeking revenge headline. I just wanted to keep building my roster, brick by brick, client by client. Still, I couldn't help but think. They'd taken my position like it was nothing. Now, I'd taken something far more valuable in return, without ever stepping foot back in that office. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Michael's company was a big name in the industry, and when people heard he had chosen to work with me directly instead of my old firm, questions started flying. Former clients began reaching out, not because I was chasing them, but because word of mouth travels faster than any marketing can. One call came from a longtime client I'd worked with for years. "Rachel, I heard you're doing your own thing now. Honestly, we've been thinking about leaving the firm. It's just not the same without you." Another came a week later. "We've had 3 missed deadlines since you left. If you're available, we'd rather work with you again." I said yes to each one, careful not to make it look like I was stealing clients. I didn't have to. They were running toward me on their own. Every time I signed a new contract, I thought about how those numbers would show up as losses in my old company's quarterly reports. Ellen kept me updated from the inside. Her late-night texts painted a picture I could almost see. Kylie pacing her office, snapping at assistants, her cheerful facade cracking under the weight of slipping performance metrics. Mark, meanwhile, was spending more time defending himself to upper management than actually managing the region. "They had a meeting yesterday," Ellen told me over the phone. "Corporate asked why so many clients have left in just 2 months. Mark blamed the market, but everyone knows it's because Kylie can't deliver." I won't lie, hearing that gave me a quiet sense of satisfaction. Not the loud, gloating kind. Just the steady, grounded feeling of knowing the truth was catching up to them. Then one afternoon my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but when I answered, I heard a voice I hadn't expected. "Rachel, hi. It's Kylie." For a second, I didn't say anything. She hesitated before continuing. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Things have been challenging here. I was wondering if we could maybe meet for coffee and talk things over." "Talk things over?" After she'd smiled at my desk while I packed my life into a box? After she'd taken the position I built from scratch and run it into the ground? I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, then simply said, "I'm not interested," before hanging up. No anger, no lecture. Just a closed door. That night, I went back to my work. 2 new proposals to draft, 3 client calls scheduled for the morning. My calendar was full, my business was growing, and my name was becoming more recognized in the industry than ever before. Meanwhile, back at the firm, the dominoes were still falling, and I didn't have to push a single one. Ellen's call came late on a Tuesday night. I could hear the mix of excitement and disbelief in her voice before she even got the words out. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Corporate just finished a full audit. It's bad, Rachel. Like really bad." Apparently, upper management had finally decided to dig into why so many clients had left in such a short time. The numbers told a clear story. Since my departure, revenue had dropped by nearly 30%. Projects were delayed, budgets were overrun, and client satisfaction scores were the lowest they'd been in years. And the name that came up most often in complaints? Kylie. Ellen told me that during the audit interviews, multiple clients described the same situation. Critical phone calls where Kylie froze, unable to answer even basic questions. Others mentioned mistakes in contracts, missed deadlines, and promises that were never followed through. "Mark tried to spin it," Ellen said. "He told corporate the losses were because of market shifts and aggressive competitors. But then the auditors started pulling old emails and project records, and well, they found a lot. Apparently, some of those records even showed me stepping in to save deals that Kylie had nearly lost back when I was still there. That evidence alone tore Mark's defense apart. By Friday, the decision was made. Kylie was called into a closed-door meeting and walked out an hour later with a single box in her hand. There was no smirk this time, just a pale, shaken face and a quick exit through the side door. Mark didn't escape either. While they didn't fire him outright, corporate stripped him of his regional manager title and reassigned him to a much smaller role at a branch in another city. A demotion in name and in reality. Ellen's voice lowered as she described the atmosphere in the office. "It's like a ghost town, Rachel. No one talks above a whisper. People are scared to make mistakes. Half the staff is polishing their resume. It's just tense." I listened quietly, my mind flashing back to the day I carried my own box out of that building. The sting of humiliation I'd felt then was still there in memory, but it didn't hurt the same way anymore. I didn't celebrate their downfall, but I couldn't ignore the irony. They'd replaced me thinking the role was interchangeable, disposable even. But now they'd learned, too late, that loyalty, experience, and competence couldn't just be swapped out for charm and connections. After we hung up, I sat in my small but thriving office, surrounded by files from clients who trusted me enough to follow me. Outside, the city lights glowed against the night sky, and I couldn't help but feel that the final chapter of that part of my life had been written without me having to lift a finger. They collapsed all on their own. By the time spring rolled around, my consulting business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. What had started at my kitchen table with a single laptop and a stack of old contacts had grown into something I could barely keep up with on my own. That's when I decided it was time for a real office. I toured a few spaces downtown, but one in particular caught my attention. It was bright, modern, and as fate would have it, just a block away from my old company. I signed the lease without hesitation. Moving in felt symbolic. Every morning, I walked past the building where I'd once been cast aside, only now I was headed to a place with my name on the door. I didn't do it to rub it in. It was simply a quiet reminder that I'd built something better for myself. Before long, a few familiar faces started showing up. Former colleagues reached out, saying they were tired of the chaos at the firm and wanted something more stable. I interviewed them carefully. I wasn't just hiring out of loyalty, but because I wanted people I could truly rely on. One afternoon, Ellen stopped by just to talk. We sat at my desk, drinking coffee, and before she left, she looked at me with a small smile. "I'm done there, Rachel. I can't keep pretending things are fine. If you'll have me, I'd like to work here." I didn't even need to think about it. "You're hired," I said, and just like that, Ellen became my operations manager. It felt like a full-circle moment. She'd stood by me when things fell apart, and now we were building something together. Business continued to grow. We landed 2 new corporate contracts in the same month, and my small team worked like a well-oiled machine. Clients were happy, deadlines were met, and there was a quiet but steady energy in the office. Then one morning, on my way to work, I stopped at a little coffee shop around the corner. I was in line, scrolling through my emails, when I caught sight of someone at a table near the window. Kylie. She was stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, her shoulders slightly hunched. The moment her eyes flicked up and landed on me, she froze. For a second, I thought she might say something, but instead, she quickly looked away, pretending to be absorbed in her phone. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. I picked up my order, walked out into the cool morning air, and headed to my office. My office. The one I'd built from the ground up, filled with people I trusted, doing work I was proud of. That, I realized, was the best kind of revenge, not shouting about my success, but living it every single day. When I think back to the day they called me into that cold little meeting room, I can still feel the knot in my stomach. At the time, it felt like the end of everything I'd worked for. Now, I see it for what it really was, the push I didn't know I needed. I never forgave Mark or Kylie, and I doubt I ever will. Forgiveness wasn't necessary for me to move on. What I did need was the chance to prove, mostly to myself, that I could succeed without playing their game, that I could build something without having to flatter the right people or watch my back every second. My clients never cared about office politics. They cared about results. They cared about having someone who knew their business as well as they did, someone who would answer the phone at 7 a.m. if that's when the problem hit. That's why, when I left the company, so many of them followed. They weren't chasing a brand name. They were following the person they trusted. These days, when I walk into my office, I see a team that respects one another. I hear laughter in the break room, not whispered gossip in the corner. I see Ellen managing operations with the same confidence I always knew she had in her. I watch my employees taking pride in their work, and I feel a quiet satisfaction that no title or corporate award could ever match. Sometimes I still run into people from the old. Clients will stop me in the street or at a networking event, greeting me with warm smiles and updates about their latest project. They tell me how relieved they were when they found out they could work with me directly. A few have even admitted they only stayed with the old firm until they could make the switch. And then there are the run-ins with Mark or Kylie, though those are rare. Mark usually avoids me altogether, busy pretending I'm just another face in the crowd. Kylie, well, last time I saw her, she ducked into another store before I could even pass by. It's funny, but I don't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I moved forward, and they stayed exactly where they were. Tonight, as the sun dips below the Denver skyline, I turn the key in my office door. The place smells faintly of coffee and fresh paper, and the soft hum of the air conditioning is the only sound left. The desks are tidy, the lights are off, and my name is on the sign outside. I step out into the evening air, lock the door behind me, and take a slow breath. The building that once housed my old job is just a block away, but it feels like a lifetime separates us. In the end, I didn't just survive, and the best part, I did it on my own terms. So, what's your take? Was I right to cut ties and build my own path, or should I have stayed and tried to fix things at the company? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear them. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new one drops.